Okay, this is a simple registration system. A user suggested that there might be a scenario where a user needs to come to your solution and they need to register or create, you know, their own user account. Um, I can certainly see some situations where you might want this. I can also imagine other situations where you would not want this in your solution. In other words, you would want um, whoever your administrator is to be the one entering in user data and creating their user account. But certainly there's easy ways to do this. Um, so we're kind of going to use some of the same concepts as we used in the login system. Um, so let's first create a button, and we're just going to drag this down, and I'm going to rename this register. Okay, and I don't have a script for it to run just yet, but I'll just leave login right here, and I'll come back and change that once I've got it written. Okay, so there's my register button, and that will fire up whatever script I attach to it. So let's talk about what we want to do. In your login script, the way we accomplish that is we use a custom dialog. Now, let me show you something about the custom dialog. Custom dialog is limited to 3 fields. I'm sorry, I'm showing you the wrong screen. These are buttons at the bottom, but if you go to input fields, it's limited to 3 fields. So you'll have to decide what your registration system requirements are. If you need to capture 1, 2, or 3 pieces of data from the user, and that's all, you could use a custom dialog. If you need to capture 4 or more pieces of data from that user, you need to go about it a different way. So let's assume it's the other way, that you need to capture 4 different things. So the first thing you need to do is you need to think about it in terms of database security. So we are sitting in a table. If we look at our database table structure, we're sitting in a database called login. Okay, there's not much in this database. And I'm not going to give my users much of a way to get out of this database unless they know how to log in. Now, the easy way would just be to create a script that takes the users to the user screen and creates a new record and asks them to type in their data. But by then you've taken them over to that user database, and it's not a very secure way of going about things, because if they are able to exit out of your script in the middle, then they've accessed your user data. And the request via the YouTube comment was using global fields. How could we do that? So I'm going to assume that we don't want to do this. We don't want to just go over there and create that. But I will need a new layout. So within the login table, okay, I'm going to create a new layout. In fact, one thing that I like to do is I like to duplicate my existing layout so I don't have to reset everything up. So if I got a duplicate layout, now you see that this layout is called login copy. And then I go to layout. Then I go to layout setup, and it shows me some information about the layout. Then I can change the name of it. And this one I'm going to call this particular layout I'm going to call registration. Or just register. Okay. And it's going to show records from the login table, not the user table. That's an important distinction. We don't want to take them to the user table and let them enter data directly. Okay. All the rest of this is pretty much okay. So now I'm on my registration. So I might as well start making the layout look a little different so that it's very apparent to the user that they're on a new layout. So I'm just going to put register as a new user. Okay. I'm not going to need a lot of buttons. Once I'm to this screen, I'm not going to need much in the way of buttons at all. Maybe just something that says save, or maybe something that says cancel and save, but that's about it. All right, so what I want to do is I want to use globals here. Now, in my globals, you will remember I have a username and I have a password. So on this layout, I'm going to reuse these fields. And as you may recall, these fields are filled with the light gray, and the text is set to the light gray. And these are set to show only in find mode. So I need to change a few things to make these usable. So I'll do that. I will go ahead and change my text color to be black. I will even set the field, background to be a different color. Maybe I'll choose maybe I'll just go with white. Okay, so if we go into browse mode, this is what our fields look like. Just plain old fields, that's fine. We want some labels on these, so go ahead and create some labels. One way I like to do it is I know I'm going to have more fields, so I go ahead and drag one. And when I do, it auto creates a label. I like to do that because whatever it's set to auto create that at, now all of a sudden I've got the right size for all of my fields. Okay, so here the value I'm going to ask him for is username. Here I'm going to ask him for the password. Here I'm going to ask him for first name. I'll create a couple more fields here. So if I drag this down and then drag this down, I'm going to create this and call this last name. And, let's see what other information we're storing on the user screen. First name, last name, username, password, and type. Okay, so we'll go ahead and let them plug in type as well. So for right now, I'm just going to leave it that, and let me change my label. All right, I need to make sure that I have fields for each one of these. I don't currently. Right now, all I've got is G username and G password. But if I select one of these and duplicate it and then rename it, I can call this first name. I like to have a G at the beginning of it. If I know it's a global, it just kind of helps me remember, but certainly you don't have to. So G first name. It is a text field. I messed up. I clicked off of it. Okay, so I was about to create a new field, but when I have it on here, I'll say G first name. Now I've got this change button. So I just changed that, and if I click duplicate again, then I can call this last name. Click change, and if I do it one more time, I can call it G type. All right, and lo and behold, it made those extra fields down here, which I could have used, but I already have this up here. So let's go back up here. Username, username. Password, password. G first name, G last name, G type. Okay, this is totally going to bug me if I don't line these up. So I'll just take a second and line these up. All right, so there we go. I'm going to go ahead, and this would bug me, so I'm just going to call this save. And I just need to, for right now, I'm just going to tell it to do nothing. All right, so that's step one. This is the form that they will be taken to. Okay, they'll be taken to this form, they will enter in their data, then they'll click save. Okay, and then the magic will happen. All right, so here's how we want to do this. First of all, we want to have a script over here on login that we're going to attach to this button. And this script is basically going to say begin registration, or we can call it registration step 1, or whatever you might want. And then maybe the save button is step 2. However you want to do that is fine. But if I make a new script, and I'm going to call this register, and I'll just call it 1. Now I can put in my script steps. Well, what are my script steps? Well, really the first thing I want to do is I want to go over there to that screen. So it's a go to layout. And I want to choose that layout, take the user to it. The next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and clear out those globals. Okay. Now I could do that a couple different ways. I have a script step called reset globals, and really all it does is clear the stuff. I could just add to that. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to add to this and see if I run into any troubles, but that way I reduce the number of scripts that I got to have. So what I would do then is I would paste that script step in there a few times. I don't know how many I need, but so username, password. The next thing it would clear out is first name. The next thing it would clear out is last name. The next thing it would clear out is type. And I don't need this last one. So I'll delete that script step. So now if I just save that, my reset globals is good, hopefully. So now I can just, as my second step of this script, I can just perform script, reset globals. All right, so time to pause and test what we've done. Well, in order to test what I've done, what I want to do is I want to pop over there and put something in these. So I'm going to put John Smith. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my login screen, and I am going to attach that register script to this button. So I go to layout mode, double click it, select the button, the script that I want to run. That is certainly not the script I want to run. There we go. It would be the register 1 script. Okay. You could call it something else. You could call it prepare to register, whatever. So now if I click that, it takes me over here to this screen. Okay. And you'll notice that those fields are empty. So it looks like my reset global thing worked. Okay. Let's test it again. Who cares that I misspelled John? Let's just leave that alone. And if we go back over here, now, if I did these steps on my own, my first step is take me to that screen. When I go to that screen, you'll see that that data is still there. But if I use the register button, it takes me to that screen and clears out those. So that's what I want to do, is I want to keep it like that. Now, I want to add one more piece to this step that just kind of makes it a nice to have. We perform the script to clear the globals, but then the next thing that I want to do is I want to select a field. Let's see. Go to field. So if I go to field, okay, and I go to that G username field, then it's kind of nice. What it does is it takes you to that field and the cursor's already in that field. So it's a little nicer for the user. So it's ready to accept them typing in their data. All right, so there's my globals. There's my script to start it. So I save this. The second script that you want is registration part 2. So I'm going to make one called register 2. All right, now on register 2, I've captured all this data. Now, I'm not going to go through this in this video, but you're probably going to want to do some checks before you proceed with this script. So you could enter in some things like, I'll do a check on one field like first name, just to show you what I mean. But I would do something like if G first name, and you could do equals and then 2 quotes. You could also do this. You could do, there's a step down here called is empty. And then you choose first name. So it's just a test to make sure they actually did enter something in there. If so, then I'm just going to exit the script and do nothing. Okay. So if that's empty, I'm going to exit the script. Else, meaning it has something, just for the sake of my own sanity, I'm just going to test and I'm going to show myself a dialog real quick. Okay, you don't really even need the second part on yours. I'm just doing it so that we can see it. So that's register part 2. And I'm going to attach that to the save button down here. So we perform a script, register part 2. Now the button is set up. Now if I click this, it should pop up with a dialog and say first name is empty. And it did not. Okay, so maybe that is empty is not the best way to do this. So we are going to try it the other way. I'm going to do G first name equals, there we go. Save that. Now let's try it. I have a record. All right, let's think about this a different way. Instead of testing if it is empty, let's test if it's got a value. So is not empty. So that's an option equal sign. Then we're going to show the dialog. Otherwise, we're going to exit the script. So let's see what that says. And of course, my dialog would say go, and let's do that. Save, nothing. Did I attach my script? Register 2. Register 2. Okay. So for whatever reason this is not working. I will have to address this in just a moment, but you'll probably want to check your fields just to make sure that they have data in them, and I'll get you the right verbiage that'll actually work. So for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go remove this, and oh wait, did I do register 1 or register 2? I did register 2. Did I save it? I think I did. If login, G first name. Let's try this. Let's try the valid. Is valid. Is valid. Your first name. If it's valid, then it wouldn't be empty. Otherwise, we exit the script. So let's move this. Let's go back here. Enter in a browse mode. Let's say I've got some data in there. It's not empty. Okay, that works. But if it's okay, so it still thinks it's not empty. Oh, I know why it wasn't working a minute ago. It was working. I'm just dumb. So let's put it back. I'll show you. Sorry, I wasted some of your time. So if we say G first name equals that means that it's empty. So I'm going to just change this and say that the first name is empty. And then I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to say first name is not empty. The problem is it was empty, so it was exiting my script, and we thought nothing happened, but it was actually working. So let's try this again. If I save it, it says that it's empty. If it does have a value, then it'll say it's not empty. So there you go. So that's your test. So what you might do is you might have something in your code that says, cool, if it's empty, maybe show them a dialog and say first name is a required field. Okay, whatever rules you want to enforce at that point. But just make sure that what you do is you, after you show them the thing, like I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to change this to is not empty. Okay. And then I will exit the script. So basically what this would do is it would say, hey, if it's got a value, then it's not empty. And I don't need that. So if there's no value, it would show me a dialog and say there's first name is empty. So in your script, you're going to tell them something. Hey, by the way, first name is empty. It needs to be there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you show them the dialog, and then you have an exit script step. And then you can do an else, meaning it wasn't empty. And this is where your real code goes. Okay, you don't even have to have the else. You could just have some exit scripts and then duplicate this. So if I duplicate that code and then I change this to be G last name, then I can say last name And I'm just going to change it to be friendly is required. And I'm not even going to give them a second button. They don't need that. They did it wrong. The only option they have is do it right. So same thing here. First name is required. Of course, I probably want to make this look a little nicer. Take away the second button, say OK. So basically, you could have a bunch of conditions here that cancel out of this script if those fields are empty. And assuming they're not empty, then it would run your code. And I'll just show you how we can feel good about that. Code runs here. Required values are present. Code here now runs. Something like that. Okay. I'm going to save this. So now if I came over here and then I tried to click save, it says required values are present. Code here now runs. Okay, so it didn't exit the script is what I'm finding out. Oh, it's because I changed these. I should not have changed these. It's empty is what I'm testing for. Gosh, I'm going back and forth, y'all. Sorry about this. So now if I click save, it says first name is required. Okay, well, if I enter in first name, now it says last name is required. So it's checking down the line. And if any of them fail, it exits the script. But if they both have a value, and you run it, it would say, hey, this is where the code runs. Now, I don't actually need that dialog anymore. This is just where I'm going to put the code. Okay, so what is my code? My code is pretty simple, actually. Okay, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to, behind the scenes, without the user seeing it, we're going to jump over to the users table. We are going to enter in a new record, plug in these values, and then come right back. Okay, so first step in my actual code section is what I like to do is I would like to freeze the window. That way they don't see anything jumping as the script runs, but I'll add that in last. So my first thing to do is going to be to go over to the other table and plug these values in. Now, I have to figure out how to see these values. So I'm going to be, once I go to that layout, I'm going to be sitting in the users table, and I need to be able to see these values that are over here in the login table. So I got a couple ways to do that, but probably the easiest, best way to do that is to use variables. So we set a variable. The way this works is you give the variable a name. The variables start with either a $sign or $2 signs. If you choose a single $sign, then this variable dies, meaning the contents of it go away after you leave the script. That's fine in this particular case, and that's kind of what I want. But if you were going to run a script that runs another script that runs another script, you might want to use the double $sign. That way it stays in memory until all the scripts are run. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do username. And the value I'm going to give this is whatever's in the G username field. Cool. I set that variable. Now I want to set the next one. This is password. Okay, and the value is whatever's in this password field. Well, I need to clear that first before there we go. I'm just going to move along and do the rest of these. I need one for first name. Duplicate that again. I need one more for last name. All right, and then I need one for type. Variable names can be anything you want them to be, as long as they start with a $sign. Okay, type. All right, so let's review what this is doing. A variable is like a bucket where you can store data. So it creates a variable, and it calls it this, which is $sign username. And the value that it puts in that bucket is whatever's in the G username field. Okay, same thing for password, first name, last name, etc. So now I have these things in variables. Now what I can do is I can go to layout, because these variables will survive across different tables. So now I can go to layout, select the user's layout. I am going to do a script step that says create new record. New record request right there. And then I'm going to use the command here, the script step called set field. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the field called username, and I want to set it to be, you guessed it, username. Okay. So now I want to set the password. I'm going to set it to be $sign password. So FileMaker knows you're calling on a variable and getting the value of that. Do the next one, first name. $sign first name. Duplicate that, and we do last name. Last name. One last to do. Type. Type. Right. So it's going to set all those fields. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my script just the way it is. Because if I leave it just the way it is, when it ends, we'll be staring at a user record with all the data plugged in. If this is built correctly, that will work that way. Okay. The only thing that I want to caution about is that on the user table, for type, we created a dropdown, and that dropdown had two values. My recommendation to you would be, when you do that, and you do something like one of these forms using globals, go ahead and make sure that you're using the right type of field, which would be pop-up menu. Control style, pop-up menu, and we already have a value list, employee type. That way it presents them with only certain things. Okay, allow entry of other values. We don't want that. We want them to have to use something in that value list. Allow editing of the value list. We don't want that either. So we want them to be constrained to just very specific types. Okay, and then once we've done that, Now we can look at it in browse mode, and you'll see that when they click in there, they have to choose something. Now you could go a step further, select this, and include arrows to show and hide the list. That makes it a little bit more user-friendly. All right, so we are going to go back and test this thing on what it's doing right now. So if we go back to login and we click register, it took us to a new screen. It cleared out all those globals. That's good. We want that. Now we're going to do J Smith for John Smith. So it'd be J Smith, password 1234, first name John, last name Smith, and the type would be whatever they choose, one of those two values. And then whenever we click save, see what it did? It took us to the user table. It created a new record. There's now 4 records instead of 3. It auto-assigned the user ID because that's set up in the database to auto-calculate to the next increment. And it plugged in all of our values here. So everything there worked exactly how we thought it should work. I'm going to go ahead and delete this record. Okay, so now we're back down to 3 records. So we go to register. So we know the thing is working, right? So what's the last thing we want to do here? Well, my recommendation would be one of the last things that you want to do here is perform the script to reset the globals so that those are reset. Then you want to take the user to wherever they need to go. In this case, for this example, I'm just going to take them right back to the login screen. And they are going to basically, we'll just give them a dialogue. How about just a dialogue that says, new user has been created, you can now log in. So the title maybe is something like attention or success or whatever. Your new user account has been created. You can now log in to the system. Okay, they don't need a cancel button. This is just informative. Okay, right after the perform, I like to take them right where I'm taking them. So I'm going to insert a go to layout. Where is my go to layout? Always go right past it. There we go. Go to layout and take them back to the login layout. Okay. I'm going to save that. And I have a startup script. And I could have just run that. That might be actually better because if you add steps to your login script, that's probably what you want to do. You don't want to just take them back to that layout. You want to go ahead and perform the script startup and then show them the dialog. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to close it. And let's go back to login. And I'm going to re-register John Smith because you'll remember that I deleted that registration. I only have 3 over here. Okay, so if I show all, I have mine, I have Bob Smith, and I have Bob Thompson. That's it. So my name is John Smith. I want a login, so I say register. So I'm going to use J Smith. Password 12345. John Smith. And I'll just say that I'm an hourly employee. Okay. I hit save. You notice it takes me back to the regular login screen. The new user account has been created. You can now log into the system. Well, let's see about that. So now if I hit login, okay, this is a problem, okay? Those globals didn't get cleared out. But for right now, let's just assume they did. We'll fix that in a moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we click OK, and sure enough, it took me over. It found that record. It came back to this screen, to the menu, plugged in 104, which is the number for that new record. So just about everything's working. The only thing that I noticed was that it didn't clear out those globals, which is bad. So if we go back to register, okay, here's probably why it didn't work, because we need to be on a layout that contains those globals in order for it to reset them. So right here after this set field, we need to do a go to layout and bring them back to that register screen. So go to layout, register. Now the reset global should work, then the startup should work, then everything should work. Let's test that. I'm going to register with a brand new one. I'm going to call this Z Smith 2121, and this is Zane Smith. He's going to be hourly. Save. Your new user has been created. You can now log in. Cool. If I say log in, it is cleared out. That is what we want. So now let's try doing this 2121. And sure enough, it found the right record, and it came back over here to 105 and said, hey, this is for 105. So that is how to create a basic registration system. Obviously, there's a lot more you can do with that. Here's a few ideas. You could have certain validations that take place. Is the password, does it meet these criteria? There's ways you can do that. You can make sure that there's not another person in the system with that name. So you could do a search of the user table first, make sure you get no results, and then continue your script. So there's a number of things that you could add to this to make it a little bit nicer and a little bit more foolproof. But that's just a good example of how to get started creating that system. The other thing that you might consider is, do you really want a new user to be able to create a login and be able to actually log in? Or maybe what you want is them to be able to create a login that goes into a queue that allows an admin person later to come along and see it in the queue and either click approve or reject. So that's pretty straightforward. What you would want then is you would want, when the script step gets to this stage where it would go to layout users, you just go to a different table. You'd make your own table that has these fields in it. You make a new record, you put these things in it, okay? And then you come back here and you do all the things where create that user. You don't need this because they can't log in right away. But it created that new user. Maybe you tell them it's been created and they'll be notified once it's approved. But then that is sitting in a database table that an admin can review, and if they like it, they can click a button that says approve, which would then sort of repeat this same process by grabbing all those values, going over to the users table and inserting all the values and then saving it. So you could have an in-between step where you approve their logins. So there's a few different ways you could do that. Hopefully this was helpful. This gives you a way. I'm just going to go ahead and create a cancel button. It's always a little nicer. Like if you get over here and you don't want to be here, then you could perform the script to cancel this process. So we go to startup. So now if you're over here and you just want to get out of here, you can go back. All right, so that's a registration system. It's bare bones, and I definitely don't recommend using it as is, as I've shown you. But hopefully that will get you the framework you need to where you could add in some additional rules and structure in place to make it work the way that you need it to work. But that is a registration system using that same global concept, only we used a layout instead of using the custom dialog. So hope this was helpful.